Hey, grief lanes and fright lanes. It's Margaret here with the Femme Fatalities, and I am joined today with
Arika. Hello again, everybody. Thank you again for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us again. So, what movie are we discussing today?
So today we're talking about the Poughkeepsie Tapes.
So, for those that don't know, the Poughkeepsie Tapes is what is considered in the horror genre found footage. And did you want to share a little bit about what makes a found footage movie a found footage movie?
So I think it's just right there in the title that it's found footage. So it really just looks like it was recorded with your standard video camera from like the 90s. Usually is how they look. There's been a couple that are found footage that'll be look sort of maybe like screen recordings of like computers or phones, recordings on phones, but a lot of what I consider the really, really good ones usually look like they're shot with like an old like video camcorder. Some of them also try to look kind of like documentary-esque a little bit. So they'll have like interviews with like cops and FBI agents, but obviously they're actors playing cops or FBI agents, but it's like a documentary interview type feel.
Since before we jump into the Poughkeepsie Tapes, do you actually have a found footage favorite? Are you a fan of the found footage genre in general?
I really like the found footage movies. I think they're really scary and that they're unsettling because it feels really real. Because it feels like you're watching somebody that recorded something and that it's, it doesn't feel like a Hollywood movie like, Friday the 13th or like Slasher or something like that. It feels like real, like you're watching this story and it really happened. My favorite found footage movie, I really liked the VHS movies, but my all-time favorite was Megan is Missing. That movie scared me so bad, it freaked me out. And the Poughkeepsie Tapes is definitely up there with those ones. It was really freaky.
Oh, wow! So it ended up there. I think we're a little bit on different ends here. Like, I agree with you. I enjoy the found footage genre. I agree that it is also very much more unsettling because it is closer to reality than a slasher film or horror film. I really enjoyed The Taking of Deborah Logan, which goes to the documentary style of found footage. Lake Mungo also goes into that sort of found videos or movies of the person and the documentary. So yeah, so if you want, check those out. Also, I'm gonna love to have you back since we both like found footage. You haven't watched Grave Encounters 1 or 2 yet.
Yeah.
Oh, have you? Well, we'll have to discuss them because we we started watching Ghost Adventures like season 1.
I was like 14 and we've been watching them together like ever since. So for like 10 years plus as long as the show's been.
So I think that would be fun to do just because we're both like Ghost Adventures fans still. And if you haven't seen Grave Encounters, it is loosely based on them. I think I read where the creators even agree that
the main guy gives Zach vibes for sure.
Yes.
And like old Zach vibes, like 2016 Zach.
Yes. So you'll have to come back and we'll have to discuss those. So today we're discussing the Poughkeepsie Tapes, which Arika shared a bit about when she was describing found footage. This is one that we're having like FBI interviews, news reports, as well as the killer's videos. I appreciate that they tried to be artistic with the videos. What bothered me was just kind of the shakiness and the color coming in and out. I found that really hard for me to like stay into the film because it was almost like it pushed me out of the experience. I'm like, oh, this is still bothered. I want to try to
I agree.
Watch this.
Before we get too into the movie, do you want to do trigger warnings for everybody?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Trigger warnings.
Kidnapping.
Brainwashing.
Violence on children.
Yes.
Violence on young adults and young women. Violence on sex workers. not much like gore, I don't think. Those are the ones I turn.
Yeah. And how I threw in there brainwashing too, because there is. So this is, I'd say this is not a femme friendly movie. This is definitely a movie like a lot of horror movies. And I had shared with you, I read a comment about somebody saying it's just another gratuitous violence movie against women.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any kind of activations around sexual assault, brutalization, disrespect for the female body, this is one of those movies you're just going to want to go ahead and skip. Also, one of the main characters, he kidnaps her and brainwashes her. So that is also very, very unsettling because it is, he's the master. He wants her to be his slave. And so that can be really hard to watch as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and suicide.
Oh, yes. And suicide.
Back to your comment of like just how it was shot, I agree with like the shakiness. I didn't like for some reason in the interviews how some of the frames were tilted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it bothered me. I did not like that part though.
I agree. And also, I don't know if it's because of low budget or I don't know if it is low budget because sometimes with found footage it can seem low budget, but that was the effect that they're really going for. That one of the characters, like the high school friend, I feel like she was reading what she was saying, and then because she kept looking down, looked like she was reading, and then looking up at the camera, and that bothered me for some reason because it looked like she was reading. So this film, I think it touches on a lot. It's making social commentary, I think, about our society's obsession with true crime, serial killers, what I think most people call now spacing on the word for when people love true crime shows. Okay, it'll come to me later.
I didn't know there was words for it.
Yeah, murder porn.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've never heard that phrase anywhere else except South Park.
Yeah.
That's the only place I've ever heard it, and then between like me and my family we talk about it all the time. Like that's just what we call like true crime like shows. Like Southern Fried Homicide. I didn't even know that was a real TV show until I saw it later. It was like, it is real. But yeah, that's what we call like true crime.
Yes.
Like investigative discovery TV. I'm sure other people do it though too. But that was the first place I ever heard that phrase.
So I feel like this movie's trying to make a commentary on our society's obsession with true crime, and you made some observations about the serial killers because this is a movie about a serial killer and his found footage tapes of his murders, and you made some connections with some real life killers.
Yeah. There is a scene where they end up talking to Ted Bundy for help catching this guy. The FBI before Bundy's execution, I believe in 94, 96, when he was executed, somewhere in there.
I don't remember.
But at the time, they would go to Ted Bundy and he would help the FBI profile other serial killers. For example, Ted Bundy helped make the profile for Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, which ultimately did help the FBI in catching him because of Bundy's assistance with his profile. So in this movie, they do go to Bundy and ask him about it. Obviously, it's an actor playing Bundy. It's not real old recordings of him. And his account of the Poughkeepsie murder is very similar to what he said about Gary Ridgway. As far as like the serial killer thing goes in it, there was a part where the killer did change his MO, which isn't common. In serial killers, they don't do that very often. I think I've only heard of a case once, maybe, where a killer changed his entire MO and it was totally different. They usually stick to the same type of victim, the same means of execution, and they usually stay pretty the same. So some of it felt like the changing MO and how he really didn't have, in the beginning, it felt like a specific type of person he was going for. It felt like some of it was just thrown in there so there could be of different people. Like, and they even addressed it in the film saying that they did 3 different profiles on the guy with the FBI, and all 3 of them were pretty much different. So I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure why they decided to do it that way. Maybe I'm just being too picky and being like, no, that's not how serial killers would do something, but I wouldn't know because I'm not a serial killer, so I don't know exactly what they would do. I thought it was interesting, but it didn't really, I didn't think it was like, oh, that's so awesome that they did that. To me, it was just kind of meh.
Well, I think you touched on something. As people, we like consistency, we like congruency, we like for something to seem in line with somebody, and that can take us out of the film experience or a book experience when a character does something. We're like, well, that doesn't make sense for this person. And I agree with you. They probably just did it to.
I think just so there was more scenes and more violence, possibly. For example, he kidnaps a little girl. She's like 8. He kills a random couple driving their car. He kidnaps a girl and keeps her captive.
19.
So she kills her boyfriend. He then targets prostitutes, just random women on the street. So it felt like it was very just kind of like all over the place.
Yeah. I agree. It just did not have that flow to it. This movie, again, like I think we've already said, you thought it was scary. I thought it was very unsettling. I felt it was a very uncomfortable film. I tend to, as a femme-bodied person, get uncomfortable witnessing violence against female bodies, which is really common. I can link this. Somebody's dissertation actually discussed women who watch horror and actually how much more women get uncomfortable during violence against women. And a lot of male viewers don't have that same discomfort. And it's a phenomenon I find very fascinating how women consume horror over men. So this one, as a woman, I was just very uncomfortable. I'm also a therapist, so then part of the movie I was thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like, what if Cheryl, the one that had been kidnapped and brainwashed, was somebody that I worked with? How would I support her? And then I even saw incongruencies, like, in her story, which, of course, if they are not trauma specialists, I don't expect them to understand how to portray trauma or a trauma victim in a film.
No, I agree. Yeah, it was definitely super unsettling. There's a lot of scenes that are just don't make you feel good, that are really unsettling, because it's part of it is he also has her trapped in like a dungeon. And keeps her tied up, makes her kill somebody. It's intense, and Cheryl does end up taking her own life. She does escape. In the end, and they take her to the hospital and everything, but she is severely mentally damaged, obviously. An experience like that would mess you up for sure. And she does end up taking her own life, but also professing her undying love for the man that held her hostage.
That's really interesting, your take, like, that she escaped, because during that, I kind of felt like he just left her. Like, he was running and he intentionally left her, almost like he was still playing a game with her. Like, I'm going to leave you and I'm going to see, like, did my brainwashing, if you actually work and you love me and you really are my slave? Because in the movie, like, you hear her repeating, what is it, like, master, I am your slave. How can I serve you, master? And so I took that as kind of like his ego being like, okay, I'm gonna, because he puts a mask on her. So he really dehumanizes her, and that is really hard to witness to, especially when we live in a world that has so much dehumanizing of other people. So I think that's another thing that made this movie so unsettling, was just the dehumanizing of her as a person.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I guess technically she was rescued, but I mean, she still escaped. She got free.
Yeah.
Whether it was, her, climbing out a window or the police showing up or whatever. I mean, I guess to me, the way she escaped, she's free.
But she's not free. Like, if we, like, get into...
She's a prisoner of her mind at that point.
Of the trauma.
Physically, her body, like, her physical self is free from that. The dungeon and him. She's essentially a prisoner just in her own mind at that point. Did it say how long he had her?
No, I don't think it said how long.
I don't think so.
He had her. So I don't know. And just, if you do watch this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is intense, that sort of trauma can be healed. It can be overcome. It's gonna take probably years of therapy, but you almost get this hopeless sense for her, like when she's doing the interview. And I remember thinking, oh, if she just had like a therapist or therapists or in a treatment program or something to really help her undo the trauma. Basically, you could say she's gonna have to see somebody that specializes in cult programming, because she was programmed, and that she could get those supports, but she needed a treatment team because she's also malnourished. So she really, I think, and that could speak to our systems. We don't have things in place where a whole person could go in and, okay, I'm the doctor that's going to help you rebuild your muscle mass and your body and your nourishment. I'm going to help you with your emotions and your brain. And I'm going to help you with this. It just seems like they returned her to her parents. And we discussed this too, how then the media push the parents to get an interview with her. And our society tends to go, oh my gosh, you survived blah, blah. Oh my gosh, blah, blah. And I don't know if you'd agree. I feel like it's almost like this entitlement. If you knew some horrible person or survived something, then it's almost like me as the public feels entitled to your story, that you owe me your experience because I watched news reports or whatever it was.
I think a lot of people feel that way, especially when something's like so like in the light of the media and it's everywhere. Like everybody wants to know everything about it. And I think a lot of media outlets don't have the respect and the boundaries for that because they want the story. Not saying that the people in the media are pieces of shit, but like they want the story. They're doing their job, that they need the scoop, they need to get this. Because, the views and all of that, it gets them up there, it gets them the good money. So,
yeah. Even just recently, we had talked about the Nickelodeon special where, right, they really wanted the story about the guy. I can't think of his name, and then how Drake Bell had to really divulge his trauma, how people thought that they were entitled to that, and all that came out. And even Mark Summers, who came out and was angry because he felt like they lied. He thought he was just doing a documentary about Nickelodeon, and he didn't even work with the main guy in question. And yet the producers, he felt like, led him to sound like he did, and I think he ended up walking out of an interview being like, this is not okay.
Yeah, he ended up walking out from what I heard. And oh my god, y'all, in the Poughkeepsie Tapes, this stupid scene change of static, white noise. Oh my god, it got me 10 times. I jumped every single time I felt like when they did the scene changes of just the of the screen. I'd be like, oh my god. It got me every time.
Do you feel like you were primed up a bit? So you guys are gonna have to check back. I don't know what order I'm gonna release this, but before we watched the Poughkeepsie Tapes, we watched The Grudge. So I'm wondering if that actually built some of that unsettlement.
Built up that suspense and everything.
Because of how that movie is filmed, and we can get into that movie when we record it, but I'm just wondering, since we watched those movies in succession.
Probably. I mean, even if I didn't realize it, probably. I think when you spend a lot of time watching scary movies and reading scary books and stuff, you start to definitely feel a little more on edge. You can feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up sometimes just randomly. You're like, oh my god, what is happening? Like, I just heard a noise. What is that? And I think it's just your brain being on high alert because you're freaked out because of the freaky, scary content you're consuming. I think we've all been there. You know, you watch a scary movie or scary show before bed, then you're laying there like, oh my god, what if there is a ghost in my closet or something? Whereas if you watch, you know, something happy like SpongeBob when you go to bed, you're probably not worried about ghosts in the closet.
Yes, well said. Anything else you want to add to the Poughkeepsie Tapes?
I think the movie was good. It's definitely unsettling is, I think, a reason why I liked it the most, is that it did make me feel fear. To me, that's what I like in scary movies, if it makes me feel fear. And, you know, with the found footage, just it being so real, also, I think, contributed to that. I think it was good. If you watch it, you know, obviously, the trigger warnings we put before, because those scenes they're really hard to watch. If anybody's seen Megan is Missing, the photos and stuff at the very end of that movie, it gives those same vibes, but like whole scenes of that. So it's really, really creepy, really scary. So I would recommend it, but it will definitely make you feel uneasy, for sure.
Whoa. Yes. So you've got one recommendation, so 1 thumbs up. I could have lived my whole life without watching the Poughkeepsie Tapes. So I'm like, meh. If you're a fan of found footage, yes, watch it. Seems like a lot of found footage communities are kind of split on it, but yet this seems like one of those ones that come up a lot in discussion boards. So if you're a fan, go ahead, give it a watch, because then you can be in the know. If you're not a found footage fan, don't watch it. I think the ones VHS, if you want to try out found footage.
I would start with VHS if you're trying out found footage. I would not go Poughkeepsie Tapes to Megan is Missing, because it'll turn you off to the whole genre.
What about, I would say maybe start with Missing. We both enjoyed the film, right, about the girl whose mom went missing.
Missing is good.
The predecessor, what's the one that came before that?
With the guy and his daughter?
Mm-hmm.
I can see that actor's face.
So if you look up Missing, there's one that came before it with the actor whose name I also can't think of, but he's in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. That is, I think that those two are a good segue into found footage. I would say the Taking of Deborah Logan, because it's about Alzheimer's with a supernatural twist, or Lake Mungo, which is about grief. A lot of found footage is with a lot of horror. People get split. It feels like people either like it or they don't.
And then, of course, if you want to start into found footage, the big mama of all of found footage, the Blair Witch.
Yep.
That's the best place to start, honestly, is Blair Witch. I would start with Blair Witch.
Blair Witch. I haven't watched Ghost Watch. It's a British film. It is also considered one of the OGs. If you get on Reddit, it's actually really cool because there's a lot of people in England who remembered when it came out. It was aired as like a TV special. And so they talked about like how terrified they were because they thought this was real. So, but those are probably the two.
Yeah, there's the Blair Witch, and then there's a documentary, like found footage of that movie, because everybody thought it was real when the Blair Witch came out too. Everybody was like, oh my god, like this really happened. And then some different film creators went and just kind of fed into that fear more and interviewed like friends and family of the 3 main folks in the Blair Witch, even though, we know now that I don't want to say it wasn't real, because it was real to an extent, but the Blair Witch is a whole nother channel.
Yes, we will check back here at the Femme Fatalities if you enjoy me and Arika. We're also going to be doing a little spin-off horror movies and horror books. It's in the works, so
Yeah.
Just check back here and there'll be all that
We will
information.
keep you posted.
Yes. So thank you for watching.
Thank you so much again for having me, and see you guys later.
Yeah.
Bye.